Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Beyond the ARC podcast. I am Rob Howes alongside Josh Stauner. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic as always. A little bit of a cold right now, but on the back end of it, so that's always a good thing. Austin, how are you doing today?
Also doing pretty well. It's a nice day outside. A little cold, but I like it to be cold outside rather than hot.
Absolutely cold, and then as it does in Iowa, supposed to get back up to 60 by next weekend already, which will be good for some American Rivers Conference sports, but you always got to have one wacky weather day in there, which we had this Saturday. We'll talk about that in a little bit here, but to start it off, women's soccer, we had the semifinals and the finals of the American Rivers Conference tournament this week. Josh, tell us all about it.
So starting off with the semifinals, Loris got a 1-0 win over Simpson. We all kind of expected that. And then University of Dubuque got a big 4-0 win over Central, which means we predicted right. The championship game was Loris against UD, and the winner of that one was the Dewhawks. The game winner came in the final 5 minutes of the game. Freshman defender Ivy Wessel scored her 5th goal of the season to win the championship for the Dewhawks once again. And then talking about just some of the awards, postseason awards, the offensive MVP award went to Alyssa Tranquita of the University of Dubuque. In conference play this season, she had 5 goals and 4 assists. The defensive MVP goes to Sierra Morgano of Loris. She led the Loris back line, led their defense that only allowed 2 goals the entire conference season. The Rookie of the Year goes to Sarah Thompson, the defender from the University of Dubuque. She played 711 minutes, just 9 off of every single minute of conference play, and she scored a goal as well.
Absolutely. So very good stuff from those offensive MVP, defensive MVP, and Rookie of the Year, which I'll talk about in a minute, but it is my honor to tell everybody the Coach of the Year, Jason Berna, out of the University of Dubuque. I do personally know Coach Berna. His son Jimmy is roommates with me and Josh here at Simpson. I've known Jimmy for a long time. Jason Berna, fantastic coach. What he does for youth soccer as well in Dubuque is just amazing, has helped Dubuque become a soccer hotspot in the state of Iowa. Of course, not the way he wanted that game to go on Saturday against the Dewhawks, but very well-deserved Coach of the Year, Jason Berna, for the University of Dubuque. Now to go back to the rest of the awards to end the year. Offensive MVP this year, it was not a given that Alyssa Tranquito was going to win that one. There were a lot of players that could have won this. It's not like the last couple of years when it was either going to be Cassie Nash or Savannah Johnson of Loris. This year, I think it came down to the fact that the University of Dubuque won the conference, and there's definitely athletes from Loris that could have won this award if Loris would have beat Dubuque in that game. Allie Hoffa of Simpson definitely had a say, could have won that award, but 4 assists with the 5 goals is a key part of that, with Alyssa Tranquita being offensive MVP. A lot of players like Hoffa usually just get goals, or there's some players that just get assists. When you can do both, that's really going to help you stand out. So Alyssa Tranquita, well-deserved. Sierra Morgano, definitely well-deserving there. The leader for Loris's defense, who is always very good, allowed 2 goals both against the University of Dubuque in that game. And then Rookie of the Year, I didn't think there were too many that stood out to me this year. I know Abby Bell of Simpson definitely had a chance to win this one, a first-team all-conference player. But Sarah Thompson, when you come into this league and play all but 9 minutes of conference play in a very good conference, that's definitely well-deserved. So congratulations to all of those award winners on the women's soccer side. So Josh, same thing for the men's side. What do you got for us?
So in the semifinals, Luther had a big 1-0 win over Central in overtime, and it came from a crazy golden goal from Luther. Francesco Muncari had the ball on the wing. He tried crossing it in to his teammates in the box. It ended up taking a deflection off of a Central defender's shoulder, guided it just over the Central goalkeeper, and that was enough to win it for Luther in that one.
And that shot, we saw a video of it the best angle you could have asked for from whoever was down on the field taking video for Luther at that game. It had a bit of a knuckleball feel to it. I don't know if Austin, you saw this video.
I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was just a knuckleball that found its way into the back of the net. Took a slight deflection, but it wasn't like a crazy deflection. It still had curve after it. It was one of the best golden goal shots I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's like something you would almost see like screwing around in practice. I almost feel like seeing that shot in a game. So unbelievable shot for sure.
And then moving on, Wartburg had a 3-2 win over Loris in the semifinals. And in that game, we found Austin's player of the week.
Yes, we did, Josh. Thank you for that. So my player of the week this week goes to Flory Gimbo of the Wartburg Knights. He had a hat trick in the first half of that Loris matchup where they ultimately came out on top 3-2. Now, Josh, I'm not much of a soccer person. I know a hat trick means something of really good importance, but can you exactly like tell me what that means?
So a hat trick is 3 goals. And so to see that in the first half of a game is incredible. You do not see that very often at all.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. And then so obviously Flory, very deserving of my player of the week this week. So then I believe we had the championship game on Saturday. Josh, what happened?
First off, Austin, do you know why it's called a hat trick?
I do not. No.
So it started off in hockey, and when a player scores 3 goals in a hockey game, all the fans throw their like baseball hats or their beanies onto the ice. So that's why it is called a hat trick. I guess I'm not positive that's why it's called a hat trick, but that is the main reason of the hat trick.
Is it like the teddy bear toss at an Iowa Wild game?
Yeah,
every once in a while.
Similar to that. But yeah, anytime there's 3 goals in a game by a player, you'll see fans throw their hats onto the ice in a hockey game. So that's where the term hat trick comes from. A lot more common in hockey than it is in soccer, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving on to that championship game, the Luther Norse were able to come out on top. They got a 1-0 win thanks to a 13th minute goal from their Swedish sophomore Elliot Lindberg. The Norse were able to hang on from there. We know the way they play. We can probably assume that it was a pretty boring game from there out. They were likely just clearing the ball every time it came to them as Wartburg just relentlessly attacked that defensive line. And then moving on to awards for the men's side, the offensive MVP goes to Francesco Mungari of Luther. He had 4 goals and 2 assists in conference play this year. The defensive MVP goes to Alejo Marcon of Central. He led the Dutch back line to a 4th place finish and played just over 700 minutes of conference play. The Rookie of the Year goes to Alexander Drexler of Loris. He played all 720 minutes, faced 94 shots in goal, and only let in 4 goals. And the Coach of the Year goes to Gary Laidlaw of Central. He's been the coach of Central since 1988. This is his 5th time winning this award, and well-deserved. He coached Central to a 4-1-3 conference record and a 4th place finish.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Since 1988, my parents, so just for context for everybody, this might make my parents feel old if they're listening to this. They've been married for 4 years at that point. So they got married in 84, just out of high school. So that's unbelievable to be a coach. So that shows his consistency and his dedication to Central soccer as well.
And you see that a lot at Central. I feel like their softball coach as well has been around over 40 years, I believe, for Central softball. So Central, I believe that was a very well-deserved Coach of the Year honor for Gary Laidlaw. Not necessarily expected to be as good as they were, and only 1 loss this season. I think the player that really stands out for me in these awards is Rookie of the Year Alexander Drexler. I think this was just a no-brainer. A lot of times, especially on the Loris women's side, you'll see their goalkeeper be all conference just because their defense doesn't give up many shots. But Alexander Drexler of Loris this year on the men's side played every game, played all 720 minutes in conference regular season play this year. He faced 94 shots, like you said, and only let 4 of them in. He's a fantastic goalie for this Loris team. And then Alejo Marcon, a great defensive player as well. Francesco Mungari, a lot of guys definitely could have gotten that one. A lot of players from Loris, I think, probably think they deserved that award. But once again, Luther won the conference. When you're the best player on a team that wins the conference, it's hard not to give you that award. So that's what it ultimately comes down to. Francesco Mungari, he's been a great player in this conference for a long time. So a great job by him. Great job by Luther. They will be representing the American Rivers Conference in the NCAA tournament. The selection show will be on November 10th. And on the women's side, Loris won, so they got the automatic bid. If Dubuque would have won that game, there would have been a chance that Loris got an at-large bid. But with the MPI standings, Dubuque just tied too many games, needed a few more wins there to have a chance to get the at-large bid. So it'll just be Loris on the women's side. It will just be Luther on the men's side. Both teams, I think that can definitely do some damage in the tournament. I think Loris women are built more for that. Luther, if they go down at all at any point in the game, it's going to be very tough, especially since I can almost guarantee you they'll have to go up north to play one of the MIAC schools, whether that be St. Olaf, Augsburg, or the McAllister, or the very good McAllister team that just won the MIAC tournament. So going to be a tough draw for Luther. Hard to tell who Loris might end up playing. Could get a UW Lacrosse in there. Could get Carleton or St. Kate's in there as well. Lake Forest, a good team this year. So going to be really interesting to see there on the women's side as well as the men's side. But moving on here, cross country, not much going on this weekend. The Luther Sega Cup was the only meet. That was a 3-team meet at Luther between Luther, Wartburg, and UW Eau Claire. Wartburg, of course, winning that one with a score of 15 points. They got first through about 15th in that one, and that's without their top 7 guys running. None of these teams had their top 7 guys running because they are preparing for the regional meet. So that was all of those runners last meet. And for a cross-country runner myself, if I went to any of these schools, I don't know if I'd be a huge fan of this meet. I prefer finishing my season on a bigger stage at the conference meet. If you don't make the regional roster, conference meet's your last meet, and it's a great way to go out because that's the meet you train for all year long, especially because Wartburg, both men's and women's, have a lot of athletes that were battling for that last few spots on the top 7 for the Knights, especially on the women's side, I know. So yeah, to me, I would rather just end my season at the conference meet, but for these teams, it's a tradition for Luther for the Saga Cup, so a great meet there as well. So next, volleyball getting underway. The playoffs start this week, and they'll end this week. It's going Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Josh, what do we got?
So starting off, we'll have Simpson playing here in Indianola against Wartburg. That should be a really good game. And then Nebraska Wesleyan will head all the way over to Pella to play Central, like you said, on Tuesday. And then the semifinals will begin on Thursday. Winner of Nebraska Wesleyan and Central will then play the number 1 seed University of Dubuque. And the winner of Simpson and Wartburg plays number 2 seeded Co.
Absolutely. And so I had 2 takes at the beginning of the year. One of them was on the women's soccer side that 4 teams would make the NCAA tournament. That take kind of aged like milk. This take, however, on the volleyball side, I said all 6 teams that make the ARC tournament will have a chance to win it.
Oh boy, do they.
I believe that take aged like fine wine. I don't think anybody would be able to predict without just a straight up guess who wins each game in this tournament. Of course, Dubuque is the favorite. I think that is clear that Dubuque is the favorite. They're 8-0 in conference play, but they still got to prove it in 2 very difficult games. Nebraska Wesleyan Central. That match went to 5 sets earlier this year. Simpson versus Wartburg. Wartburg swept the Storm earlier this year, but Simpson this time, there's no other Simpson events going on Tuesday. You better believe a big student section in Indianola, as that one was at Wartburg last time they played, so that one will be good. And then Thursday, Simpson or Wartburg against Co will be a great match. And then Nebraska Wesleyan and Central against Dubuque will be a great match. No matter who plays against each other in the championship, all will be very good matches. Dubuque in a spot right now where they're almost guaranteed in the NCAA tournament. Everybody else, I believe, would have to win the conference tournament to make the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be really fun to watch some volleyball here this week. Next up, we've got some football this week. We talked about the wacky weather. It was snowing in some parts of the state. It was snowing the night before in some parts of the state, as we saw in the BV Nebraska Wesleyan game. But Austin first up, as always, Central at Simpson. What happened in that one?
So it started off with Simpson scoring 10 out of the gate. DeMarco Young had a phenomenal first quarter, taking it all the way to make it 7-0, and then Central had to punt the ball, and then Simpson got it back and went down and scored off an Aiden Lanier field goal. And then from there, it was an ugly game for Simpson as turnovers hurt them badly. I believe we were talking 3 fumbles and a couple picks here and there. So just self-inflicting wounds and 2 blocked punts that went ahead and went for touchdowns. And Central ultimately playing how they needed to with those turnovers and taking advantage to win 35-10 over the Storm.
Absolutely, and that's one of those games where I don't think I've really ever seen anything like it. Like you mentioned, Central scored 2 touchdowns on block punts, but they had 3 scoring drives totaling 4 plays, 2 one-play scoring drives and a 2-play scoring drive. Take away those plays, like obviously you can't because those are the key plays in the game, but Simpson's defense played very well when Central didn't have the ball deep in Simpson territory to start the drive.
Yeah, especially on short fields, like trying to hold them. And then Central didn't play a clean game either. They definitely had some things where they're probably going to look back on it and clean it up going into their final week in a big matchup. But no, in no means is Central like, yeah, that was our best game of the year. There's no way. Simpson is definitely going to be saying that as well. And ultimately, it just came down to who makes less mistakes, and that was the Dutch at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And Coach Reed Hoskins, after the game in a post-game interview, had said what you're going to look back on in this game is the mistakes that were made. And in crappy weather, you can't necessarily use that as the reason for it. Of course, it definitely had an impact. There's not going to be that many turnovers in the game in perfect weather for either team, but you're going to look back at the mistakes. He also said that the defense played very well. So it's definitely a game for Simpson. Now they'll head to Nebraska Wesleyan next week. If they win that one, they're 6-4, winning record for the first time since 2017. So definitely a very good season for the Storm if they can close that one out. Now, on the rest of the football side, Nebraska Wesleyan at BV, like we mentioned, a lot of snow on the ground for that whole game. BV came away with the win in that one. Co just boat racing Loris the whole way. Loris couldn't score until they were down 63-0, and that's when Co took care of business there, 63-7 on the win, with no points scored in the fourth quarter. And then what turned out to be the game of the week, and I don't think
Who would have thought, huh?
anybody would have thought about this one being game of the week. Luther at home against the University of Dubuque. Now, this was UD's last game of the year, and the game was 27-20 when the University of Dubuque fumbles on their own 1-yard line. Luther trying to get their first win of the year, and a goal line stand by the Spartans in the fourth quarter.
Great job by that UD defense to hold that loser team, because as we've mentioned multiple times, that loser team, it doesn't matter what the score is. It could be 63-0 or it could be 27-20 late in the game, chance to go tie. They're going to fight, and they're going to keep going all 4 quarters.
Absolutely. Luther will have one more game. They'll play against Loris. Definitely, again, a winnable game for Luther. Now we're seeing how they play. They've improved every week, so that should be a good one. Now, as we mentioned, Simpson, Nebraska Wesleyan, Luther at Loris, BV at Wartburg. Wartburg already clinching the playoff spot and the regular season conference championship. Austin, we've got one more game next week.
It's a big one.
What do we got?
We have the Co-Hawks going to Pella to face the Central Dutch in second place, and I believe Central, I know this for a fact, Central controls their own destiny. They win. They're a one-loss team to Wartburg. It's pretty safe to say they're going to be in the playoffs. Now, if Co wins, Rob, what happens if Co takes that game?
If Co takes that one, it's going to be very interesting. As you mentioned, Central right now 15th in the MPI. If they win, even if they go down a little bit, there's no chance that Central doesn't make the playoffs. So the Dutch should be in with a win. As for the Co-Hawks, you have to scroll down. They're ranked 45th in the MPI right now. They'll get a very big quality win boost if they beat Central. It's going to be very interesting. They might need a couple teams to lose, but Co should make it as a 2-loss team, I would think. Now, if you go with it again, I think Central stays above Co in the MPI standings. So even if Co wins that game, there's still a chance that Central will get through to the playoffs and Co doesn't. It's not necessarily a head-to-head factor with the MPI because Central had a bit more difficult, I wouldn't even say a bit more difficult of a non-conference. It's just that they won their difficult non-conference game. They played Randolph-Macon, who's 22nd right now in the MPI. Co lost to UW River Falls, who is the hottest team in college football right now in any division, possibly. They
without a doubt.
destroyed La Crosse this weekend, destroyed Whitewater the weekend before. They just won the WIAC. They're currently 6th in the MPI rankings. So really interesting to see. I've got no clue what's going to happen if Co wins that game. I know if Central wins, Central's in, Co's out. That's pretty self-explanatory. But I think Co has a good chance to win that game.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if they run the ball as well as they have all year. It's going to be really interesting to see.
And both this weather, we've been talking about it this whole episode, that favors both offenses. Both teams love to run the football and play defense. So it's going to be very interesting, especially I don't know what the weather looks like for Pella this weekend. We'll obviously be in Lincoln for the Nebraska Wesleyan matchup, but
it's looking really nice. It's looking like 60 degrees. So good for pretty much every sport that'll play on Saturday, which will be the NCAA tournament for soccer, cross-country regionals, and football. So very good weather there.
Yeah, I would that's really tough. I would almost say Central might have the slight advantage because I think their offense through the air is better than Co's.
Absolutely. But at the same time, we saw their starting quarterback go down this week. I don't know how bad that injury was. Of course, you don't want to rush anything. They were already up pretty big in the game against Simpson to bring him back. And they have a good backup quarterback, especially that can run. So it'll be really interesting there.
And then Simpson, I know they're playing Nebraska Wesleyan, who isn't necessarily the best team in the conference, but there's some serious injuries on the Simpson team right now that could definitely impact this game. In the late first half, we saw Jaden Thorson, the star freshman quarterback, go down. Was an apparent leg injury. I don't know too much more. I know he's getting evaluated here today at some point by our athletic training staff. And then backup quarterback Evan Weber, who's only a sophomore as well, went down on a fumble that I thought was down, but the refs let it play out after the DeMarco Young fumble, and he went to go grab the ball, and then he went down in a heap. It looked like his wrist or maybe something in his arm, maybe his shoulder. I'm not going to speculate and give anybody a false evaluation or anything. But so Simpson right now is playing with their third string quarterback, Jaden Hubbard, who's also a sophomore and saw his first time back on the field in well over a year. He did not play one game last year with an injury from the summer, the year before. So we will see what happens in that matchup.
Absolutely. Then going on the basketball side, not too much going on quite yet. It's a good start on the men's side. A few quality wins there. Of course, Dubuque taking down DePauw, not by much, but Loras lost to that DePauw team this week as well, so very interesting there. Simpson with a good start, 1-1. They lost to a good Illinois college team after a big comeback win against Benedictine. Then on the women's side, Wartburg and Luther lost to Johns Hopkins, an nationally ranked team. Other than that, pretty expected there on the women's side. Loras played very close with UW Platteville, so that would have been very good if they could have gotten that win. UW Platteville ended up winning that one by 2. But yeah, very early on the basketball side, Simpson might have the toughest stretch here out of anybody. They head to Drake, which technically counts as an exhibition game for Simpson, a real game for Drake. That one will be on Monday. Then they will travel to Augsburg and then St. John's, so a very difficult schedule there for them. Then moving on the women's wrestling side, like we mentioned last week, Wartburg took on Simpson, and a couple injuries for Simpson really could have been the difference in this one. If matches would have been able to play out a little bit more, it would have been a lot more interesting, but Wartburg did take down Simpson on the women's wrestling side, really the only huge duel on either the men's or women's side so far. So that is all we have for around the American Rivers Conference this week. Now we'll head over to the D3 side, a lot of it football-based this week, of course. But on the WIAC side, we mentioned it a little bit before, but UW River Falls, their football team is back. They are on a roll right now. They have beat UW Platteville, who was number 6 at the time, beat number 8 UW Whitewater, number 9 UW La Crosse, all by 2 or more scores. The only game that was even reasonably close there was the one against Platteville. Austin, you're a football guy. I don't know if you've really watched any River Falls football, but you know how good the WIAC is.
Oh, yeah, and we've been talking about it all year, and the playoff bidding, and like how many teams are they going to get because of how much they're beating each other up. But there's clearly one team that's better than the rest, and it is the University of Wisconsin River Falls. Obviously beating all top 10 teams by 2+ scores. I mean, I don't remember the exact score of the La Crosse game yesterday, but there was a lot of hype around that game. Everybody's expecting it to be close. Everybody's expecting it to come down to the wire. And River Falls was having none of that hype. They just went in, took care of business, and former coach that I got to work with, Seth Howard, obviously went there. I've talked to him every now and then, and he is full on the River Falls train as an alum, and is telling me every week they're gonna win, they're gonna win, they're gonna win. And I give him some pushback a little bit. I'm like, well, it's a good game, can't be too confident, but he has every reason to feel that way right now. So they definitely are a top gun offense too. And then their defense is just lights out, always playing to the best of their abilities. So we're going to see what they can do in the playoffs. This should be very interesting rounds for them to see how far they can make it and exactly what will happen.
Absolutely. They call themselves a Top Gun offense and a Cobra Kai defense, which, going back to Coe College, Coe put up over 40 points on this UW River Falls team. We knew River Falls' offense might be the top offense in Division III football right now. Of course, you got North Central, who can do it on both sides of the ball, teams like Mount Union, but River Falls right now 6th in the NPI standings, which you never know what could happen. They'll probably have the toughest strength of schedule by the end of the year. They have one loss, which is the only reason they aren't number one. They'd be number one for sure if they wouldn't have that one loss right now. But on the MPI side, Johns Hopkins number 1, then it's Mount Union, Wartburg, North Central. So those are your top 4 right now. I don't think North Central should be anywhere lower than 1, but you never know what could happen. I think as long as North Central and Mount Union right now are on opposite sides of the bracket, I think they did a decent enough job, because I think those are by far the top 2 teams in the country. Wartburg is good. They've played some closer games that shouldn't have been too close, but we've said that in past years, and then they almost beat Mount Union one year, so it's very hard to tell.
Yeah, and who was that one River Fall loss to on the, do you know, looking at the schedule here, what they had?
River Falls this year, I believe they lost to UW Oshkosh. I'm not positive. I'll look back on that one right now. And their loss is to UW Oshkosh, which that's when Oshkosh was a very highly ranked team. They lost that one 21-17, but Oshkosh now really fallen off, and now UW Stout is River Falls' last game, which they've been playing very well
that's not
as
a gimme
well.
for them either. They got to go get that.
They lost on a missed last-second field goal to Platteville this past week, so very interesting. I know the weather in Platteville was absolutely terrible. My girlfriend in the marching band was not a fan of that weather in Platteville this past weekend. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
That's interesting. She had to play because my girlfriend at Northwestern College, which is the NAIA school in Orange City, they called them off. They didn't even have to go out and play. They had played some basketball games later in the night, but to be outside, they were like, no, we're not going to try. They were going to try, but they ultimately that morning said,
so
no,
believe it or not, I don't know if this ended up happening, but all of the woodwind players, in at least the flute players, my girlfriend plays flute, they were given kazoos to play if it were to be raining, and they didn't want the flutes to get ruined, but they gave them kazoos to play. I don't know what all the instruments were that got those. My guess is the woodwind instruments that would have gotten those, but
especially the true woodwind. Obviously, there's plastic and then real woodwind instruments. Those real ones, I mean, I would for sure expect them to have those.
Absolutely. So I don't know exactly what happened, but I knew the weather was brutal there in Platteville. Now, moving on, we've mentioned him before on the podcast, but Monty Quinn of Curry College, over 200 rushing yards on the season. He just needed a little over 70 this past week. He got 260, and he dominated that one, and we might see him in the playoffs.
You mean 2,000 yards?
Yes,
there, Rob.
2,000 yards. He got 200 yards this past weekend, and he is now over 2,000 rushing yards on the season. You're right there, Austin, my mistake. And we might see him in the playoffs. As I mentioned, they are currently 8-1 overall, undefeated in conference play, but possibly one of the games of the week in Division III football. Curry College playing against Endicott. Endicott is 8-1 as well, 26 in the MPI poll, while Curry is 34. So possibly a must-win game for both of those two teams. Going to be very, very interesting to see. I'd love to see Monty Quinn in the playoffs.
Let's get a Curry College versus UW River Falls defense, so we can see Monty Quinn versus that Cobra Kai defense that UW River Falls like to claim they have. That'd be interesting to see for sure.
Absolutely, and I would assume we probably wouldn't see it until late in the playoffs with like regional stuff, but I would love to see that as well. Curry College, especially if they play against any team with an explosive offense, would be such a fun game to watch because Monty Quinn, best running back in the country. Of course, Caleb Blaha, probably the best quarterback in the country right now for River Falls. If not, he's definitely up there. So that would be a matchup that everybody, I think, would want to see. And who knows, we might see River Falls play against a team like Wartburg, Co. or Central this year in the playoffs, which Wartburg's defense against River Falls' offense would be a really good matchup, I think. I think the edge would, of course, go to River Falls at the moment, but Wartburg, you never know when they play against some of the best teams. They bring out their A game, and they're always ready for that battle no matter who they play.
The only thing I would say about Wartburg right now is that their end of season schedule isn't probably as strong as like what River Falls is playing. They played the tough teams early. Like I think the last time it was just a couple weeks ago that they played Central. So and then they've had a couple easier games compared to like what Central's playing. So I would maybe say the River Falls edge, but that might also make them more tired in the long run. And Wartburg's not having to play as hard because they know they can get those games easier.
Absolutely. There's definitely positives and negatives. I think Wartburg's big advantage was having the bye week this week. In the WIAC, everybody has the bye week on the same week early in the year. And this year, Wartburg lucked out. They had the bye week this week. Now they have a game against Buena Vista, which I think is good because if they get a first-round bye, they don't want to have back-to-back bye weeks. They want to have that one game against a team that they should beat. Buena Vista's been playing well recently.
Boost the confidence up.
But yeah, Wartburg, definitely a good thing that they have an easier game here to end the year. So that's all we have for around Division III and American Rivers Conference sports. Now it's time for everybody's favorite part of the episode, Josh's fun fact of the day. Josh, go for it.
All right, so in 2023, an 18-year-old from Wisconsin was part of a plot to hack sport betting accounts and steal from them. The group that he was a part of stole about $600,000 from 1,600 accounts, and in one message to his group, he wrote, "Fraud is fun."
Interesting.
Very interesting there. So unwrapping this here, an 18-year-old not legally allowed to sports bet in Wisconsin, a state where you're not allowed to sports bet online unless you're like at a casino in Wisconsin. And then $600,000 from 1,600 accounts. I can't even wrap my head around that. Of course, gambling right now is at the forefront of really everything in sports, but the NCAA especially, they pushed back now. The 22nd is when NCAA athletes can bet on pro sports. So definitely at the top of the conversation right now in all of NCAA sports. But Josh, if you were to do this, do you think you'd be writing in your group chat mocking everybody?
You know what? $600,000 is a lot of money. I'd feel like I was on top of the world, so I definitely could.
Well, that answers my question. I was going to say, Josh, I don't know how old you were in 2023. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't you, that you weren't stealing money to like buy new discs for disc golf or anything like that, potentially.
I don't think new discs would really help his disc golf game right
Well,
now.
I know, but it makes him feel good when he's playing for sure.
That is true. That is true. More discs to buy, more money, more discs that he's allowed to lose.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
definitely a possibility there. We know, of course, this wasn't Josh, but if it was Josh with $600,000, I'm sure he would spend it on new discs and all of it.
And maybe
on new
tattoos as
discs.
well.
Maybe a few more tattoos as well. Austin, what would you spend $600,000 on?
Well, my parents probably want me to say my college debt, probably. But $600,000, gosh, I don't even know. Like maybe a car or something, or like probably like the good person in me, but also like donate to charity or something like that, or maybe back to school, like for maybe buy some like new equipment for the like equipment room, or like do something like that for sure. That'd be kind of interesting to see. But that 600,000, man, I don't even know, like legitimately.
Absolutely. If I was 18 and had $600,000, I don't really know what I would do. I think right now I'd save a lot of it to buy a good house for when I needed a house, then have still a decent amount of money left. Of course, pay for college, maybe get a car as well. Just really it would be very helpful not to do anything extravagant, but right now just start a very good life after college would be my go-to for that. But that's all we have for you today on this week's episode of Beyond the ARC.
I'm Josh.
I'm Austin.
And I'm Rob. And that's how you do a podcast the D3 way.
Beyond the ARC is an independent podcast and is not affiliated with or endorsed by the American Rivers Conference.